Hey everybody, my name is Emily and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. And this is a channel where we talk about books and reading, and today is another Tag Tuesday. So that's what we're here to do today. Today I'm going to do the perfection of reading tag. I was tagged by Daniela at Uncommon Reader, and I'll link her video on this tag below, but this is an original tag created by Ledken over at Reading from the Depths, and he also previously created the philosophy of reading tag that went around a little while ago. So this is not really like a follow-up to that tag, but just another one that he's created. But his description of the tag is this: the Tibetan Buddhist instruction to live a meaningful life is to try to live the life of a person or being who has totally dedicated their life to benefiting others. The 6 perfections are 6 types of enlightened activity that make up conduct which ordinary people are encouraged to try and realize in their own lives. This original tag is celebrating those 6 perfections and exploring how they might be reflected in our reading lives. I did paraphrase some of that a little bit to jump over some words that I knew I would not be able to pronounce, so Ledken and I apologize for that, but I will copy and paste the whole description below so you can read it at your leisure as well. But so Ledken has created 6 different prompts based on the 6 perfections, and he asks that we also have a book that represents each perfection. I have one for most of them, but I think we'll be okay. So without any further ado, let's get started. The first prompt is the perfection of generosity. What is an experience of either book gifting or book receiving that was meaningful or memorable to you? I feel like I gift and receive books a lot, kind of. So it was kind of hard to pin down a particular one that really stood out to me. But the first one I thought of, frankly, was what to expect when you're expecting. I know this feels like a strange choice, but my mother gifted this to me when I got pregnant with my son. You know, this is just the classic thing you read and look through when you're pregnant. So, but she enclosed a really sweet, meaningful note with it, and all of that. So this is just a nice memory of that season of my life. But I will say, if you are pregnant or looking to get pregnant, I do technically recommend this book more than What to Expect When You're Expecting. This is Expecting Better by Emily Oster, and there's nothing wrong with the classic book, but I think Expecting Better is a little more tailored to the millennial generation and younger, based on kind of like what we're concerned about or looking at through pregnancy. But anyway, this is a whole other topic, but just, I don't know, thought I'd put it out there for what it's worth. But also as just like maybe a second little one that I thought of, a few years ago, my husband got me this really pretty edition of To Kill a Mockingbird, which is one of my favorite novels, and it has the nice like gold edges and things like that. But he knew this was one of my favorite works, and the only other copy I have is my old beat up, well-loved copy from high school. So it was really thoughtful of him to get me a pretty edition of it. The second prompt is the perfection of ethical discipline. What are your best and worst reading habits? My best and worst reading habits. Probably that I cannot seem to stick to a reading plan to save my life. I cannot stick to a TBR hardly at all, it seems. I think I tend to imagine that I can get more reading done than I can. and that kind of causes me to bite off more than I can chew maybe, or make these huge, beautiful, aspirational TBR lists that aren't quite attainable in the time frame that I set them for. So I think I probably just need to learn to rein myself in a little bit when it comes to creating those lists. But honestly, probably also the worst habit is just picking up my phone and scrolling instead of reading. That's honestly the worst reading habit that I have, worst habit that prevents me from reading or causes me to not read. My best reading habit, though, is that I'm most dedicated to reading in the morning before work. My practice, not specifically for reading really, but I'm an early riser. I get up at 5 or 5:30 every day before anybody else in the house does, and that is my time to myself. And that's when I take some time to have a little quiet time, to read. I sit there and drink my coffee, maybe take a walk, but before the rest of the day gets going. So that space of time in the day is when I'm most dedicated to habitually reading. I try often at night, but it's more likely to get interrupted in the evenings. But as far as a book for this prompt, I really, there's probably better choices, but the one that I just kind of thought of really was Little Women. And the reason I thought about this is because Marmee is constantly teaching these girls to be more in control of themselves, to have a better grasp of their emotions and their actions and their behavior, and to really develop and exercise self-control. And that is such a lost teaching, I feel like, in today's world. No one teaches anyone to have self-control anymore. And in this world where we are constantly advised to let our emotions reign supreme over everything and to dictate our decisions, the emphasis on self-control in this book is a breath of fresh air to me. So I'll put this as my book for the prompt of the perfection of ethical discipline. The third prompt is the perfection of patience. What is a book that you anxiously waited for, and did it live up to the expectations you set for it? So let's see, I probably have maybe like kind of two options for this. The first is the later books in the Harry Potter series, probably kind of like the 5th, 6th, and 7th books. Those were coming out when I was in high school. And by that point, the series had become popular and everyone anxiously waited for the release of those last few books, including myself. And the release always seemed to happen while we were at the lake house at some point in the summer. And so I just remember that my mom would take me and my sisters down to the Walmart in the small little town where the lake house is. And we would get to pick up a copy, but we could only get one copy for all of us. And so being the oldest, I usually got to get it first. And I would have to just like breeze through it, just speed through reading it so that my sister could read it. And I just remember being anxious for when it was going to come out and when we would get to go to the store to go pick it up. And it was just some kind of fun memories of that. And I guess I would say they lived up to the expectations at the time, you know. The other book I'm going to pick for this prompt is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. I've talked about this book a couple times on this channel, but the reason I'm picking it for this prompt is, let's see, I guess I must have been in high school. But when I was in high school, my mom and my aunts and my grandmother discovered this series. And I feel like all they could do was talk about Jamie and Claire and how wonderful these books were, how wonderful Claire and Jamie's relationship was, and just everything about these books. And I would just overhear their conversations. And so I would ask my mom, like, Mom, like, can I read it? Like, can I borrow your copy? Like, I want to read this book too. And my mom just adamantly said, you cannot read these books until you are 18 years old. There are things in here you can't read until you're 18. And I know she was mainly referencing the sexual content in the book, but there are also other just like graphic violence and things in the books as well. But at the time I was horrified and so upset that she was making me wait to read these books that they could do nothing but talk about. It just felt very unfair to me. And so I waited and I waited. I think, oh gosh, by the time I asked her to read it, I probably had to wait at least 18 months to 2 years or so before she let me read them, but like until I turned 18 so I could read them. And so I have a summer birthday, and so I graduated high school at 17 and I turned 18 immediately before, like just a week or so before I moved to college. And so I made my mother send Outlander with me when I went to college so I could start reading it. So it was great. And honestly, like the anticipation and the waiting probably did make the reading of it a little bit sweeter. But so I'll always have great memories of, getting to read that instantly as soon as I went to college. And prompt number 4, the perfection of joyful effort. What is a book or series that you found difficult to complete but found to be ultimately worthwhile? And the one I picked for this might be a little different, but I picked Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. Now, this is not a difficult book to read, in my opinion. I find it very readable, very approachable. It's not very long. It's not even 250 pages. This edition makes it look a little longer, but it's not. But it's also so dense and chock full of knowledge and wisdom and thought, and every sentence feels that way. And so I think it took me a long time to get through and wade through, because I was constantly rereading passages as I was going. I would read a paragraph and reread it because I felt like there was just so much more to get out of it, and then I would just sit and ponder for a while. So for me, I think the perfection of joyful effort would be Mere Christianity, not because it's a difficult book to read, but because it's one that took me a long time to get through, because there was so much to sit with and think about, but definitely worth the effort. Prompt number 6, the perfection of wisdom. What is a book where you learned something, especially something unexpected, whether profound or mundane? I feel like I learn things from books all the time. That's one of the reasons I love to read. One of the reasons I've kind of subtitled this channel A Continuing Education, because I feel like that's what reading is to a large extent, especially when you're reading things like the great books or the classics. Those are what they are because you learn things from them and they contribute to the larger cultural conversation. So it was hard for me to kind of pick like an ultimate book for this, but I kind of picked 2 that I think about more frequently, I guess. And one of those for me, I mean, there's so many books I could pick for this, so I'm just kind of picking 2 just as examples. But one book that I always learn things from is The Lord of the Rings. There's just, I know I talk about this book on my channel a decent amount, but there's just so much here. There's just so much here. I mean, even without delving into the rest of Tolkien's legendarium, this just on its own has so much in it that there's just so much in this book that rings true and that you really realize as you're going through it. But so The Lord of the Rings is one for me. And then another is Anna Karenina. This book, I mean, there are plenty of books to me that ring true about human nature, but this for me is near the top. I recommend everybody read this book. The way Tolstoy describes each individual character and their perception of events and how they reach their decisions and how they're feeling about different circumstances rings 100% true to me. And I learned so much reading this about people, and it's wonderful. And gosh, I feel like those kind of books are sometimes the hardest to describe, which is why I'm kind of struggling here. I think, yeah, they're just profound when there's so much truth about life in them. And it's kind of hard to describe those truths unless you just read it. Unless you read it and you see it for yourself and pull it into your own being. But yeah, so there's my other one for the perfection of wisdom. Okay, now tag others. So I'll see if I can tag a few people down below, but if I don't tag you, please feel free to go ahead and do this tag again. Thank you to Ledken for creating another great tag, and thank you to Daniela for tagging me. And I will see all of y'all again soon. Thanks.